My life completely changed after I represented Afghanistan at the 2004 Olympic Games. We went to the airport to go to Greece. We wore our national uniforms. For me, that was very special because I felt like I'm going to the moon, I'm going to space. I competed in the sport of judo as the first female athlete from Afghanistan at the Olympic Games. And it was a very historic moment. I was privileged and honored to be able to represent my country at this world sports arena at the Olympic Games. When I returned from the Athens 2004 Olympic Games, things were different for myself and for my family. Afghanistan was broadcasting about Afghanistan's national team competing at the Olympic Games by radio, newspapers, television. Whenever I went outside, people would recognize me. People would send me messages that I dishonored the Afghan traditions, I dishonored the Afghan values. The Taliban and the religious fundamentalists made it impossible for me to even have basic rights to continue to go to the sports facility. I received a phone call from my boxing coach. He said that there are a few men at the sports center, the National Olympic Committee, with knives and guns. They were concerned that if I trained, more girls will come to the sport. So before women do that, they wanted to put a stop to it immediately. My coach, he wanted to save my life. Therefore, he stopped training me. One of my sisters was also very successful career woman. She was a TV presenter. She wanted to prove that women are able to do the job that Afghan men can do in Afghanistan. The Taliban group were watching us, found our address, our home, and then one day my sister was murdered. They killed her at our own house in 2005. It was impossible for me to remain in Afghanistan. I immediately left Afghanistan and I went back to the neighboring country in Pakistan and I became a refugee again.
Sports is one of the great unifiers on this planet, but at the same time, sports can absolutely be weaponized by governments for far more insidious purposes. Whether it be political gain, some form of reputation laundering, alleviating global narratives. It dates back thousands of years. If you look through some of the tombs in Egypt right now, you will find hieroglyphs that actually depict wrestling matches from the time of Ramses II. These wrestling matches, which took place in grandiose stadiums, were actually a means for Ramses to show Egyptian superiority over his subjects in other places. Once upon a time, it was only the great empires that were able to do this. Now, every authoritarian has his own sports playbook. The use of sports as a form of statecraft and soft power has a long-standing history of success. We're going to be talking about how dictators and authoritarian regimes use sports as a political tool. Now, they do this through three primary means: through oppression, through power and control, and through reputation laundering.
Afghanistan has always been very traditional and patriarchal. The Taliban's version of Sharia law believes that sport is an indecent act for women because it brings visibility to women's body. The Taliban have now banned all forms of sports for women and girls, closed all the sports facilities, and there are punishments for women and girls if she's caught or seen going to any local gym or any sports facility in Afghanistan right now.
The Taliban isn't the only regime to use sports as a tool for oppression. In Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov has utilized sports both as a means to encourage young men to participate in hyper-masculine activities, while at the same time as a tool to oppress women, insisting that women do not belong in the sports landscape but instead belong in the household. And in Saudi Arabia, we're seeing a very interesting development. After decades of sports being used as a means to oppress women, Saudi Arabia has completely opened up, allowing women to participate in whatever sports activity they please. This development shows that sports can both be used as a means of oppression and at the same time can thereafter be used as a tool to present Saudi Arabia as a reformed nation.
The Afghan National Committee is small warlords in Afghanistan, meaning that each head of the national federation, for example, football, judo, volleyball, you name it, any sport, they had their own local army who always guarded them, who always also intimidated people who challenged them.
Sports may be the entity that is propping up the Taliban more than anything else in the world right now. When you have Taliban officials sitting at a table and behind them is a flag of the International Olympic Committee, what does that say to you?
The Afghan National Olympic Committee, they're not an organization to promote women's sport, to promote gender equality. They are there to exist for their personal and political interest and power.
Sports institutions and sports ministries are but an extension of the regime. The dictators' best friends and henchmen are actually placed in positions of power in the sports landscape because it is the easiest way for those dictators to continue to ensure that their political ambitions are achieved. In Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov has placed several of his favorite cronies and politicians in positions of power. In 2015, he started a mixed martial arts gym and organization. This gym was an extension of Ramzan Kadyrov's government. Not just that, but he was actually funneling mixed martial arts fighters from his gym into his private army. This has not stopped Kadyrov from being able to operate internationally for the most part, including having some of those fighters sign with the Ultimate Fighting Championship, the UFC, a US-based mixed martial arts promotion. It sounds so simple, really, the deployment of sports to distract from human rights abuses or to redefine global narratives, but it's working. This is exactly why it continues to be part of these dictators' playbooks. There's nothing stopping them.
The Taliban are changing. They're changing their rhetoric. They're changing their public image. They tweet, we care about sport, we care about human rights. But when it comes to the practice, that's a very different world. The Taliban are the exact same Taliban from the 1990s. They stone women to death. They held public execution at sports stadiums. They completely violated human rights. Members of the Afghan National Olympic Committee, they have started collaborating with the Taliban, using the female athletes as a shield to protect themselves. They brought women's team from the volleyball, cycling, and other sports together in a very rushed manner, really rushed time, just to satisfy the IOC that we have women's teams. There is no long-term, there is no plan for the Afghan women's team in any sport.
The Taliban have been largely successful in using sports to normalize its regime, but the Taliban is far from the only example of this. We've really seen this take place in Saudi Arabia, in the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Rwanda, Russia, Chechnya, China. It is not just the authoritarian regimes that are responsible for this, but the international federations and governing bodies not just allowing this to take place, but almost encouraging and emboldening these autocrats by simply handing them these prestigious events on a silver platter. In the case of soccer, the governing body is FIFA. FIFA and the IOC have long claimed that they are harbingers of peace. Their intention is to unite and unify people. The truth is, though, that they go to the highest bidder. And the highest bidder are always authoritarian regimes. It seems like dictators are just at home now when it comes to sports. There is nobody stopping them, not even FIFA and the IOC. Now, many of you watching this video today are going to be wondering, what can you do to make a difference? Well, I have something for you. At HRF, we've actually created a tool whereby we've been able to analyze all the top soccer teams in the world to determine which ones are linked to authoritarian regimes. Sometimes it's through a small sponsorship, sometimes it's outright ownership. Knowing this is exceptionally important. And then from there, you can connect with different fan groups, because the more there are of you, the more your voices count. And every single one of you matters. All your voices matter. Your voice matters.
The IOC banned the Taliban from the 90s, and they also banned the Taliban from the 2000 Sydney Olympic Games. I'm asking the IOC to ban the Taliban from the Olympic movement completely. And I want the IOC to put all the female athletes into the refugee team, because all the female athletes from Afghanistan, they're in exile and they are refugees. We are Afghan women. We exist and we matter. The principles of human rights, gender equality, women's rights, and women's dignity should not be compromised under any circumstances, under any regime. At the end of the day, the principles of human rights are stronger than men with guns.